Greetings coders, this video will cover how to make a 2-layer portal and how to add a boss collider to it so that it triggers our portal script. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our classroom website, and under the class work tab under module 7 support you will see a world.jpg. Go ahead and click on this file. This is going to be the base of our portal. We're going to click on more actions, open in new window. This will now allow us to download it. Go ahead and click on the download button. When you download it, it will download into our downloads folder. Let's go back to our Unity project. In our Unity project, we're going to right click inside our assets / my prefabs or my asset folder, and we're going to go import a new asset, and we're going to import the image file that we just downloaded. So you can see that I downloaded it, several times, but you obviously have one. Go ahead and click on import. Okay, we're going to make a material out of this image that we just downloaded. So we're going to right click again on the my assets or my prefab folders. We're going to create a new material. So we're going to create material. We're going to rename this material my portal material. So my portal MAT. When you're done renaming it, it will be a standard shader. We're going to change that shader to instead of standard to particles. And of the 5 options, we're going to click on priority additive soft. Okay. And now that you change the shader to particles priority additive soft, you will now be able to change and add a texture to it. So we're going to take this image and add it as a texture to our material. Okay. So all we did so far was create the material. Let's go and actually create the particle system. So we're going to right click on empty space inside our hierarchy window, or alternatively we can go to game objects, go to effects, particle systems. Okay, either way you can either right click here, go to effects, particle system, or add using your game object window. Okay, so now that we have this default particle system, we're going to make sure that it's somewhere close so that our character can see it, not directly on our character but pretty close. Okay, let's go and get a good habit of renaming it right away. We're going to rename this to my portal main PS. So my particle main PS, meaning my portal main layer particle system. And the first thing we're going to do is understand the structure of particle systems. Again, there's like literally 15 tabs you can click on. The first thing we do is we're going to actually apply the material that we just created to the particle system. So how you change the material is you go down to render, and you see right here it says material, which is under the 3rd option. This is default particle system. We're going to drag my portal material and replace default particle system. And now you can see that our little whirl here is being used to create the particles, and it's going upward and whatnot. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and change some of its default values of the particle system to kind of get the effect that we want. We obviously don't want to be throwing these particles. So we're going to go to start at the my portal main PS, basically the default values here. We're going to first click 0 for start speed. Why? Because we don't actually want this particular effect, this particle, to be moving. We want it to be stationary. So now you can see that there's like these particles now, and they're kind of populating in a circular motion because we didn't change the shape. And right now we actually don't want it to be any shape. We want it to be just a particle and not have it move and not emit it in any particular shape. Now the question you should have now is, why does this not look like the world that we had down here? Well, because we have too many of them emitting in the same location. So now it looks like a kind of a condensed power ball. If you go to emissions and change 10 down to like 2, you will start to see kind of the worlds that we created. Now there's only 2 of them being created every second versus 10 a minute ago. And we're actually going to change the lifetime. Another reason why this thing is so dense looking is because each each particle that we're creating is living for 5 seconds. Let's make it live for only 2 seconds. And now you can sort of see the more of the whirls. So let's go ahead and change the size of this, because this obviously this portal is way too small for our character to jump into. We want to change the start size from 1 to 4. And now we really kind of get a good, size portal to kind of jump into. Now, you might have noticed now that when I kind of travel around this ball in this whirl, it doesn't change its views. Like I can never look at the back side of the portal. And that's because this image, in essence, is being projected as like a two-dimensional object that's always perpendicular to the camera or our view. So how do we change that? We're going to go to back to render, and there's an option called render alignment, and it says always adjust to the view. No, what I really want to do is I want to give it a local location. Okay, so now by changing from render alignment from view to local, you can see now that it becomes more like a disk, and this is what I actually want. Now I obviously don't want a portal that goes horizontal. I want it to go vertical. So I'm going to change the rotation of one of these axes, in this case the x-axis, from -90 to 0. And now the portal is kind of upright, and I can kind of see behind it now. Okay. All right. So let's close render again. Let's go back to our values. So we changed the start lifetime to make it only 2. We changed the start speed so that it's 0, so that it's not moving, and the start size to be 4. Now, let's start critiquing this portal. The first thing we can critique is that the portal doesn't actually spin, right? The portal just kind of has a world look, but doesn't actually rotate. So what we're going to change that, I want to change the start rotation as a 0 degrees. But what I really want is to make it a random number between two constants. So for start rotation, I'm going to go -360. And for start the maximum number, I'm going to do +360. And now you can sort of see our particle rotating, but it still looks kind of jaggedy, right? So the animation looks kind of choppy, and we're going to fix this in a minute. But let's go ahead and change our color while we're at it. So right now the color of my portal is like pure white. I'm going to go with a green color portal, and I'm going to adjust it somewhere here. So it gives it a nice kind of whirl. But what I want to make sure that you guys do when you guys make this color is, because you don't want it to be too bright, I'm going to change the alpha to only 128. So I'm going to change this to 128, 255, 128, and 128. And now the color is not so dense. It has a little kind of mystical, transparent look to it. And that's what I was going for in terms of color. Okay, I think this does it for kind of our default color settings. Now, back to my critique. This looks kind of choppy, right? So the reason why it looks kind of choppy is because these particles are so bright when they start, and so bright when the particle dies. Doesn't really have any fade effect. So to add a fade effect, we're going to go to color by speed. And we're going to check color by speed, and then we're going to click on this gradient editor. Right now, at the beginning of its life, so remember the top bar controls the alpha, the bottom bar controls the color. Now I don't really want to touch the color. I don't really care the color to be different colors. You're welcome to change the color if you want with the bottom bar to make it, 2 colors. Make it, green in the middle, purple on the edges, whatever you want. That's up to you. But more importantly, in terms of just trying to get this fade effect that I want, I'm going to have a keyframe at 0% with 0 alpha. Meaning that when this thing starts, I want it to have 0 alpha. Okay. At the end of its life, I want it to be full alpha. Okay. And hit restart here. So let's go ahead and change some of the other values and see what's going on. I don't understand why it's doing this. Let's go ahead and go back to 50%. So at 50%, I want it to be full alpha. So 255 at 50%. This should give my particle full effect when it's alive. And let's go ahead and change the alpha to 0 at the end of its life. Now, my portal disappeared. So let's go figure out what happened there. Start size 0, start speed 2, color green. I don't know what did happen to my portal. Let's figure out speed range. I don't think I changed the speed. Oh, I did color by speed. Oh, I'm sorry. I did color by speed. I meant to do color by lifetime. So I'm sorry. Uncheck color by speed. Go to color by over lifetime and go ahead and change the values. So that's why it looks like it was dying. So again, at 0% of its life, basically when it first born, you want it to be 0 alpha. At the 50% mark, just go ahead and right click above it. You can be more precise by changing the numbers. You want it to be full alpha at the 50% of its life. And at the end of its life, at 100%, you want the alpha to be 0. Okay? So now, looking at my particle effect, it starts to fade. And when it starts to fade, it looks like it's actually animating, and that choppiness that was once there is now gone. And it really gives this a cool mythical look to it. Okay? So that does it for color over lifetime, emissions, shape, and I think that's it. We basically got the first layer of our portal. So we just basically have a green, swirly looking particle effect that, you know, has a little bit of, kind of looks like an animation effect to it. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and right click. We're going to click on effects again, and we're going to create another particle system. Now we're going to make this particle system a child of our first main layer. Okay? So this second layer is meant for us to create particles that kind of show that this portal is sucking in particles, right? So let's go and again, get in good habit of renaming our things. I'm going to name this my portal additive, ADD, PS. So meaning this is another layer to add to our main layer. So when you make a child one object, another child of another object, in this case, this system, particle system, being a child of this particle system, you should zero out the X, Y, Z. And what this does is that it centers the child to the parent. So now the new particle system that I created is being centered to the parent. Now, again, the idea is that I'm trying to make this kind of a circular particle system that kind of has the particles being sucked into the middle. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is change the shape of my particles. Right now it's being released inside a cone. We obviously want to release it in a circular motion. So I'm going to click on circle. And you can see right now that the circle is not what I want. The circle is horizontal, whereas my particle effect is vertical. So just simply go to rotation and change one of the numbers that are -90 or +90 to 0. And that should get your circle to be the same orientation as your portal. Now, back to the shape of my particle system. It's basically emitting from this circle, and this circle is obviously not big enough. So let's go ahead and change the radius. 1 is too small. Let's try 2. 2 looks a little bit too big. I'm going to do 1.75. So now my second particle system is about the same size as my main particle system. So let's go ahead and close shape. And let's go to the default values again. Okay, so under the default values, again, you click on the title of the particle system, and you can see all of its default values. Let's go ahead and change the start speed of these particles to 0. Again, what that does is that it basically freezes it. So you can see where the particles are being created, and they don't move, and they'll die where basically they get created. So right now, you know, I kind of like where the particles are being created, but I want to move these particles inward. And these particles are kind of big. Let's just work on the size first. Right now the particles are too big. I'm going to change the start size to a number between, let's go 0.05 and 1, and 0.1. So now the particles are much more smaller. They're varying in sizes, and it's giving me kind of an idea of how my particles will look like. Now, to make them look like they're being sucked inward, we need to change the speed. So when I change the speed back to, let's say, +1, the particles are going in outward. And if it's at 0, it's standing still. So how do I get to go inward? Well, some of you guessed it. It's a negative number. So let's try -1. When I do -1, the particles do move inward. Unfortunately, they're moving inward too fast and living for way too long. So the particles end up looking like they're crisscrossing. So to get the effect I want to slow down the speed. So instead of -1, I'm going to do negative, I don't know, 0.2. So now the particles are kind of going more slowly. They're being sucked into the middle, but you can still see that some of them are crisscrossing. So maybe I'm going to lower down the lifetime. I'm going to change the lifetime of my particles to, I don't know, 2 seconds. And now you can kind of see that most of the particles are kind of dying toward, at most dying in the middle. And, maybe we don't have enough particles here. We only have 10 every second. I think it's the default value. Let's go and change the emission rate to, let's go 100. And now the particles are kind of being sucked into the middle, and we're getting that real, feeling that this portal is sucking in all these particles. Okay, let's go back to the default values again. So we changed the lifetime to about 2 seconds. We changed the start speed to be -0.2 to make it go inward and being sucked in. We changed the size of it so that it's varying sizes between 0.05 and 0.1. We don't need to add rotation because these particles aren't rotating, but we do want to change the color. Right now the particles are white. I'm going to again make them green, and I'm going to make it about the same color, except I'm probably going to change the alpha to be brighter, so 255 alpha. So I think my numbers were 128, 255, 128. So my particles are nice and bright, maybe a little bit less bright. Let's make it a little bit more white. I don't know. Maybe 200. That looks good. Okay, so again, that's an art. You can kind of decide what you want the color and contrast of your particles to be. So we now have a second layer that has this kind of effect where particles are being sucked in. Another critique about my particles is that these particles, again, kind of appear out of nowhere. They're super bright, and they stay super bright until it goes into the center, in which case they eventually die. Now, this is kind of like the same critique as our original layer. We're not giving it a color over lifetime. There's no fade effect. So by clicking on this, color over lifetime, we again can change the color over lifetime so that it starts out dim, gets bright in the middle, and then dim again as it dies. Now, if you created a preset from the previous time you made the particle system, you can just click on preset. Okay, and again, the presets just kind of memorize the values that you had. The values again are at 0%. We have 0 alpha. At 50%, we have 255 alpha, and at 100%, we have 0 alpha again. So basically, the particle starts out dim, gets bright during its middle of its life, and gets dark at the end of its life. And now these particles really have a kind of a fading effect where it's not just appearing out of nowhere, and it's kind of fading the way it's supposed to. Okay? All right. So now that we've finished with color over lifetime, let's give it more motion effect. Like you see how the way the particles are being sucked in? It doesn't look like it's kind of being sucked in because there's no trail. So there's something called trails that we can add. Okay? So before we add trails, we need to give it a trail material. So anything under materials will be under render. You see right here that the default material, the material is the default particle system. We're going to actually give it a trail material. And we're not going to be fancy. We're going to keep it the same material as the material of the particle itself. So we're going to click on this button right here under trail material. It's going to open up a selection window to select the material. And I know most of you guys have these icons showing. If you change the scroll bar down to the far left, it'll actually just show the text name of the particle. And I'm going to just, again, create the same particle. So I'm going to type in default, and I'm going to type in default or click on default particle system. So the trail material is the same as the material of the particle itself. Now, Mr. Wynn, where's the trail? I don't see it. I created trail material and there's no trail because you never told it to create a trail. So there's another function right here or another option right here. It's called trails. We're going to click on it, and now all my particles have a trail material. Now, maybe you don't want that. Maybe you don't want all your particles to have a trail. So we can change the ratio of the number of particles that have trails. So 1 means 100% of particles have a trail. I only want, let's say, 25%, so 0.25. So only 25% of my particles have a trail, and it's going inward into the center. And now you really get kind of a cool effect where the particles are being sucked inward. Okay? And I believe that's basically it. So now this portal is kind of done. It has 2 layers. It has this suction material. Now, again, this is still it's a science on how we build it. It's still an art until how it looks. So if this is what you want to do, make it look like, so be it. But then say you don't like something that looks this structure. Maybe you want to add some noise. If you click on noise, again, this is optional. You can really make your portal look kind of, unstable. I mean, you don't like that look, maybe you just unclick noise. Now, of course, maybe you want noise, but you don't want it as hard. So you can change the strength and frequency of your noise, and that will obviously change its effect. Let's say you maybe wanted a longer trail. You can go to trails, and you can change the lifetime of the trail. Maybe you want it to be longer. Let's say 1.5. Now the trails look longer. Maybe you want it even crazy longer. Let's say it's 5. So now the trail lives for 5 times longer than the particle lives. So again, this is up to you, how you want to change the settings. Maybe you want the particles to be faster. You can change the speed of the particle to be faster. But maybe you want to decrease its lifetime. That's all up to you. Again, these are all options that you can do. Maybe you want to add a 3rd layer. I see some students try to make it look like lightning's coming out of it or in it. Those are all features you can change with trails and noise and other things. Okay, but this kind of creates the visual effect that I want to give you guys kind of a base. Now, the last part is also very important, and it's to turn this portal to actually be a portal. So what I'm going to do is, because I'm not comfortable putting a box collider inside the particle system, I'm going to create a parent real quickly. So you're going to right-click, create empty aimed object. We're going to rename it real quick. We're going to rename it to my portal parent. Okay. And if you don't have room inside your hierarchy, you can just go to game object, create empty. It's the same thing. It'll create an empty object. I'm going to drag my portal main particle system and make it a child of my portal parent. Every time you create a child and put inside a parent, make sure you 0 out the XYZ. So I'm going to 0 the X, 0 the Y, 0 the Z, and make sure the other child is 0, 0, 0. Now if I pull the parent or move the parent, it will move the children as well, and everything is nice and centered. Okay. Now that we have a my portal parent empty object here, let's go ahead and add a box collider. You go to add component, you type in the word box, and one of the ones that come up is a box collider 3D. I know you guys think that you should be using the 2D one, but because we're in a 3D world, you should actually use a 3D box collider. Okay. Now looking at the box collider, obviously my box is way too thick and not tall enough and not wide enough. You can go ahead and change the box collider by clicking on the scale tool. And I'm going to use the scale tool to make the blue axes thinner, and I can grab this entire plane and make it wider. So now my box collider, anytime I touch this box collider, I can trigger something. So how do I do that? You click on is trigger. Now this box collider becomes a trigger for something. Well, what do you want to trigger? You want to trigger my portal script. So my portal script should be inside your prefab folders. All you have to do is simply drag it and add it as a component of my portal parent. And now you have to give my script a location where you want to teleport the player. So I'm going to choose to teleport the player to portal 2. So how I do that, again, how you use my script is you click on the thing you want it to go to and you replace it with target game object here. So now if I collide with this box, it's going to trigger this script that teleports me to portal 2. Let's go ahead and hit play and see if this is true. So the particle system gets created, and if I jump through, I get teleported to portal 2. Okay, and that basically ends my tutorial on how to create the particle systems, to create the portal visually, and then to add a box collider and my script to make it actually act like a portal. Okay, all right, see you guys next time.